it well. Played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
So this is take 2 of episode 5 of Slice. The first one ended after about 30 seconds because I hadn't done Sam's recommended vocal warm-up routine. But yeah, thank you for listening so far. I'll just say one more time that likes, rating, reviews, subscriptions, all that really helps. We had our first written review on iTunes, Sam, last week, which was nice. It was flattering rather than scathing as well. So anyway, we've been talking about how best to introduce Sliced, which is a new podcast talking about tour-level professional golf. And I've come up with something that may or may not be rubbish. We're going to tap into some Sam's musical tint, and I'm going to read some song lyrics which relate in some way to one of last week's winners. Are you ready, Sam?
I think I'm ready.
Okay, this could fall flat on its face and eat into our precious hour. So I'm going to give you one extra clue, is that there is a local connection for me and the artist behind this 90s classic, okay?
Ooh, okay.
Well, I tried to tell you so. Yes, I did. That's in parentheses. But I guess you didn't know. As the saddest story goes, baby, now I got the flow. Because I knew it from the start, baby, when you broke my heart, that I had to come again and show you that I'd win. Right, I can tell already you don't know it. So we're going to go into the pre-chorus, which is you lied to me. All those times I said that I loved you, you lied to me. Yes, I tried. Yes, I eyed. Do you know it now?
No.
Okay, it's fallen flat on his face. That was, of course, Return of the Mac by Mark Morrison, born and raised in the same vicinity as me. Very different career paths. And I suspect we'll never do this again. Sam, how are you? How great was Rory McIlroy?
Was that so? That was Return of Rory McIlroy. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Look, in the example we agreed on, it was the song that goes, "I come from a land down under," and it was instead, "I am Danny Van Tonder," which was probably easier, and I've ramped up the difficulty level in a live recording, and it's
the funny thing is, Ben, I mean I should have got that really, given that I do actually own Return of the Mac on vinyl. So
wow.
But for some reason, when you have songs like spoken lyrics, I find it very hard to like. I guess I'm kind of a musical person, so I hear the tune and I relate it to the lyrics, but the lyrics when they're taken apart from it, it just. I don't know.
Yes, but I'm certainly not going to sing it next time. So we may never speak of this again. But there you go. We've wasted 2 minutes and 37 seconds. We've barely mentioned a golfer, but we have mentioned Mark Morrison, who I believe, and I apologise if this is libelous, went to prison for tasing someone, which I've never done, certainly.
That's I didn't actually know that. I knew there was some sort of controversy about him, but
he may have done something far more sinister. And if he has, I apologise for being flippant yet again about a crime.
Well, what's he up to nowadays? I mean, it's been a while since.
I really don't know. Maybe he's hosting a musical podcast where they begin with some sort of story about golf and how it relates to a musician. I doubt it.
That would be good, wouldn't it? I'd listen to that. Right, let's talk about the Mac himself, Rory McIlroy. I mean, it was. I don't know how much of it you saw. I tuned in around about the 12th hole yesterday, and for a while it looked like, I've sort of 5 or 6 people are in this, and then within probably 15, 20 minutes of me turning on, he eagled to 14th, birdied to 15th, and it was like, it's over. So it was pretty clinical, really, in the end.
It was, wasn't it? Really impressive. Because by his own admission, I think Rory's let slip some tournaments over the last few years. And although this is a regular PGA Tour event, of which I think he's won 27 now, certainly a lot. And you could say, he regularly waltzes to victory at Quail Hollow and places like that, and Dubai and wherever else. But Pebble Beach will have meant something to him. He is a student of the game. And it was big for him. And the players up against him were sort of in that second tier, but they're all proven winners of high-profile tournaments, major contenders, some of his Ryder Cup teammates, obviously, which may have helped relax him in that final group, I wonder.
Yeah, quite possibly.
But that eagle on 14, I mean, driver 7-iron to 14 is nuts. It's not how the hole was designed, let's put it that way.
No, no, probably not. But you put a driver in his hand, he's going to do crazy things and impressive things, not crazy things in a Spieth way, crazy things in a sort of how do you hit it that far and that straight consistently. But yeah, it was very clinical in the end, and yeah, I think probably it did put him at ease a little bit playing with Shane. Certainly can't hinder, can it? And I believe I'm correct in saying that was his first ever win in California, which
stroke
is
play.
surprising.
Yeah, he won the match play at Harding Park, didn't he?
Oh, okay. Oh,
maybe
so
2015, something like that. But
Right.
yeah, the stroke play tournament it was, and he said afterwards that he did speak during the week about how venues matter, and I think I think we have to let people change their minds, right? 10 years ago, McIlroy probably didn't think that, and he's come to realise it, and that's a good thing, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't hold him to account, and you could definitely argue, and I think Ryan French quite rightly pointed out that when Rory says, "Oh, venues matter," well, he's only really turned up for this event now that they've almost mandated it and put $20 million in the prize fund. But I do believe him when he says that. I do think he really believes that there are certain places in golf that are different to the others. Clearly, he should have won at St Andrews by now and hasn't. How he's not even won at Dunhill Links. He's had a few chances in that as well. He's now won at Pebble Beach. Obviously, the big missing piece of the jigsaw is Augusta National. I can't remember where he won the Australian Open. I want to say it might have been Kingston Heath. But he maybe not now I say that. Anyway, he's won an Australian Open. I don't think he's won at Royal Melbourne. But there are those certain courses which exist on a higher plane.
Cathedrals
and with respect,
of golf.
Quail Hollow is not one of them. So it's good that he's won a tournament at Pebble Beach.
Yes, cathedrals of golf. He called them in the interview yesterday, which I enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, it's a stunning venue, and I really enjoyed it as an event. But coming back to your comments about him changing his mind, I mean that leads on to something I wanted to discuss, because when he was a sort of a younger player, a couple of things he didn't really care about as a younger player were the Ryder Cup. He made comments that were saying it's not what I focus my career on, it's not really what I judge myself on. The Olympics he certainly wasn't sold on as well as a youngster, and these are things that he's certainly turned sort of done a 180 on, because now he came out, BBC interviewed him last week, and he said he has 3 ambitions left in the game. Obviously winning the Masters, it goes without saying, winning an Olympic medal of any kind, and winning an away Ryder Cup, which is obviously relatively rare that happens. I mean, how do we rate his chances of achieving those 3?
Well, yeah. Instinctively, you want to say the away Ryder Cup is the most likely, because you could do that in September. He can't do the Olympics for another 3 years, and he only gets one chance at the Masters per year. And also, we've got a very strong core to that Ryder Cup side. Rahm, Hatton, McIlroy, and Fleetwood as well. You'd be worried about Hovland and Fitzpatrick at the moment, and 1 or 2 others. But basically, whatever side turns up at Bethpage, although the odds will be stacked against them because of the nature of the Ryder Cup now and the huge bias towards the host team. The fact is that the USA should have won at Medina, and basically the home team always wins. So it's not easy, but it's definitely achievable. The other 2. I suppose for me, the interesting thing is that he didn't mention winning an Open at Portrush, and maybe that's too specific a target and placing too much pressure on this year. But we had an interesting debate on Twitter about the gold medal one. I mean, he's so permanently in the elite in golf that it seems hard to imagine he won't have at least 3 more Olympics, maybe 4, maybe even 5 if he really wants to. Well,
it wasn't gold. It wasn't gold medal, was it? It was any medal, I believe.
Any medal. So a top 3 finish at the next Olympics, you're looking at like a 6-4 shot. A 40% chance of doing it, and that's at Riviera, by the way.
Yes.
And I actually think as well, an important point here, and this is not me being guilty of underestimating Scottie Scheffler yet again, but of all the players in world golf, I would suggest that the most likely to be at that Olympics is Rory McIlroy, because although Scheffler is so far clear at the moment, clearly it's very unlikely he misses Riviera. There are very good elite American golfers who will not play because there are so many of them. Whereas with respect, there are not many elite Irish golfers. So McIlroy is all but certain to be there, and he'll be a leading contender. Of course, he knows really, really well. So, I hopefully he can do all 3. it feels like the Masters is the hardest one, because it's also, as well as being the one he only gets one shot at a year, and the one where all of the best players in the world will be there, which they're not in the Olympics and they're not in a Ryder Cup. As well as that, it's the one that carries that great historical significance, right? I mean, winning bronze at Olympic Games might well mean a lot to him, and rightly so, but I don't think it would change how people perceive him, whereas the Masters changes everything.
It does, and I have a take on this Masters thing, which is something I think I've mentioned on Twitter before, but I really feel like he's going to win the Masters after when everyone's given up on him winning the Masters. Like, I feel like there's so much pressure, both internally and externally, for him to win the Masters that, however well he's playing, he's just going to not crumble under that pressure, but he's going to struggle with that pressure. And I think he's going to do almost a Sergio, because, when Sergio won, people weren't really talking about him. People had been talking about him 5-10 years before that, when, being among the leading contenders. But when he won, he wasn't really fancied to do so. And I think it's going to be a similar story with Rory. He may be sort of mid-40s. People aren't really talking about him. He's moved on to whoever else is, expected to win that tournament, and he's going to do it then. That's my prediction.
I admire your optimism and your faith in this theory. My concern would be that this is Rory McIlroy, the biggest superstar in the post-Tiger Woods era, and that he will never turn up at the Masters without expectation. That's the worry, isn't it? That if in 10 years' time even he is still a better golfer than Garcia ever was, which is possible, will we have given up? And that raises an interesting point around how you price the Olympic medal, right? To get to the sort of prices that I saw mentioned on Twitter last week as theoretical ones, really you've got to think he's going to be turning up and going off 40 or 50 to 1 for these tournaments, and that feels like a long way off to me. But obviously it's a heck of a long time. But that's the thing for me in McIlroy, whatever he does or does not go on to achieve, there's many, often when we talk about Tiger Woods, and if you ask Tiger, I believe that the record he's proudest of is that 100 and however many it is successive cuts made, I believe. That certainly is up there for him as one of his most cherished sort of secondary achievements beyond the actual silverware. Well, for McIlroy, I mean, I was 25 years old, I think, when he started being elite. And I'm certainly not 25 years old now, as you can well tell. And he has not at any stage during that period not been an elite golfer. And that is phenomenal. And we can talk about all the others, and, how you decide who is the best player of a generation will differ. Some people, Brooks Koepka, because he simply has won more majors, and that's fine. It's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. I dare say Rory would swap. Maybe he wouldn't, because Brooks hasn't got a claret jug, and he's only won 2 of the 4. But who knows? But the point is, there are other ways you can measure these things, and if one of them is longevity, consistency, and that sort of permanence, then he is without equal. I can't imagine it not extending to 20, 25 years of being a top 20 golfer. Pure madness.
So you think, going back to the Olympics, you think he's going to still be playing this? We're looking 2028 is the next one. He's going to be 39 years old. 2032 he's going to be 43.
That's in Brisbane. I've already checked. I don't know where they go after that. Hopefully, Hollywood, Northern Ireland, but it seems unlikely.
But yeah, so 2036 he's going to be 47 years old. Do you think he's still going to be playing in that one?
Yeah, unless he's already done all these things and decides that he's had enough. I think there's one of the interesting questions about professional golf now that will only be answered in time. Is what happens to the lifespan of a golfer? Is it as broad as it can be now, or is it as we've grown used to, or is the athleticism and the pressure on players' bodies that we feel sort of anecdotally is resulting in more injuries? More little bits of surgery for people like Ludwig Åberg. I think there's probably an element of, Tom Kite probably had a little wrist operation once, but we didn't know about it. But it clearly golf has become more dynamic and powerful. At the same time, they've learned what to eat, how to exercise. So you could argue it could actually go the other way. Like there's and when I look at Rory McIlroy, I think, well, there's no reason you can't still be doing this when you're 50. Some people would say, well, he's putting so much pressure on his body that actually careers will be shorter, and with the money they're making, there's not the same incentive to keep going to the Champions Tour, which used to be such a massive carrot and should be abolished. But
I was waiting for that.
there's really no reason. The way I see it, we will find out, but I don't see why he would have to stop. And he absolutely loves golf, right? And in a lot of sporting professions, the reason it's so hard for players to give up and to retire, and the reason so often it's fans saying, "Come on, it's time to go," and the reason Rafa Nadal kept going until his body just couldn't do it anymore is because he loves to compete and he loves his sport, and it's all he's known since he was 5 years old. Rory McIlroy is exactly the same. I think people underestimate how much he cares about golf, how much he loves the sport fundamentally, and how hard he has worked to be as good as he is. So I don't see him giving that up easily or quickly. So yeah, Brisbane 2032, here we come. Complete the career clean sweep. He'll already have won the Masters by then. We're winning the Ryder Cup at Bethpage. I don't actually believe that, but I've said it. And maybe he'll even pop in the Open at Portrush as well. Look, Sam, to conclude my thoughts on Rory, he went into a studio and hit balls into a blank screen for 3 weeks last October to fix what he perceived to be errors in his swing. He's come out since. His worst finish is 4th, and he's won twice. Roll on the majors.
Yep. I can't argue with that. It has potential to be a very big year for him, but let's not put any more pressure on him, shall we?
He's certainly listening as well. I mean, that's a given.
We should also mention, while we're on this topic, the ace that he made and the ace that Shane Lowry made. Both were impressive, but the footage, the official footage of Rory's ace was pretty disappointing. But I think there was some fan footage from behind the tee where you just see the ball disappear into the, behind the flag, and it was just that was awesome. But yeah,
fairly amazing. The PGA Tour haven't issued a cease and desist and had that taken down if they haven't already. But yeah, I mean, look, without getting misty-eyed about it, they must, and I haven't read Rory's transcript or Shane's actually, they must sort of at some point yesterday, probably when they're walking up 18 and the competitive aspect of the tournament is gone, they must have had that moment where they thought, you and me were playing at, I don't know, Lahinch when we were 17 years old, or Royal County Down, or wherever, dreaming of what they could go on to achieve. And here they are, 20 years later, walking up Pebble Beach's 18th hole, both of them major champions, both of them Ryder Cup winners. What a privilege it must be for them to share that with a friend, and to get the hole-in-one together the same week as well. It's the stuff of dreams. It really is.
Have you, talking of stuff of dreams, have you ever had a hole-in-one yourself, Ben?
Yeah, Enderby, 9th hole, thinned a 9-iron, never looked anywhere but in. Enderby's a 9-hole course not too far away from where I grew up, where you could just pay and play. My friend, who is not one for giving praise, even if I had, curved this beautiful high draw that pitched 3 feet away and rolled in, I suspect I would have got no more than a well done. But he swore at me because I think it was to win the match. So yeah, it's a shame. Definitely for a recreational golfer like me, I would like to have. I used to play at South Leeds, which no longer exists, which is a shame because I had Alistair Mackenzie greens and was a really nice golf course. I hit a 6-iron, I think it was, to a downhill par 3 there, and it probably was 2 inches away. And that was it was exactly how I drew it up, and I wish it had gone in, because that would be something I'd like to have done. How about you? I genuinely don't know the answer to this. I mean, presumably you had at least one around Pirates Cove.
I'm not sure I did actually. But no, I did. I got my first ever hole-in-one about 18 months ago now. No, it was 18 months ago? I don't know, 2 years ago, let's say. I didn't see it go in.
The golf ball behind you? Sorry to ask. Is that the golf ball behind you?
That is it. Yeah, you can see it on the shelf here in a little display case. And yeah, it was. I didn't see it go in because it was an uphill shot, but it was one that I went up there. I was like, look around the back. It's got to be over the back. I looked around for 5 minutes, couldn't see it, and I'll have a look in the hole, and there it was. So yeah, I was very, very excited to see that because it's been a life ambition of mine. So and I'm not a good golfer, Ben. So and I know a lot of quite good golfers who've never had one. So it's sort of bragging rights to some degree, but it is obviously luck, isn't it? Let's be honest.
So next on the list for me is to hit a good shot that goes in. Next on the list for you is to see the ball go in. I mean, presumably it was a good shot?
Yeah, so it was purely struck. So there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you combine our holes in one, we've nailed it basically.
We've both had a decent one, I suppose. Moving on to the Bahrain Championship. Very happy to see Laurie Canter win. I suspect you might have mixed feelings because you had money on Pablo, I believe.
And Cantero.
Both.
Cantero, where's your cutoff? Look, it did take me a while to be happy for Laurie Canter, who seems like a really nice man. I've had the odds exchange with him, and how can you not like him? And I do love, and I've written this in my preview which will be out on Monday of the Qatar Masters. I do love that golf has that ability to, for every McIlroy and Hovland and whoever else, Hovland's a bad example at this point, but for all of those, there's players like Laurie who, when he was 20 years old, it was very clear to anyone who watched amateur golf in England that this kid could be really, really, really good. And it's taken a decade, and it's taken the Challenge Tour, and it's taken the Sunshine Tour, and it's taken, actually, and it'd be interesting to hear what he thinks about this. Wink. But
are you alluding to the fact, Ben, that he might be coming on the podcast next week?
Yeah, if he's not too big for us now. We had already booked him to come on the podcast. His fee's going to have gone up, isn't it? We're not paying him. I'd be interested to know. I don't want to be again flippant about serious things, because obviously COVID's not long ago and it was horrendous. But it was really that summer that his game went up to another level, and that he might have just, in some ways, the time away from the tour, and I wonder if that was a factor in it. But he's a fabulous, fabulous player. The fact that he's working with David Howell in his putting, who knows what he can go on to achieve. I mean, I said it, I think in episode 1 or 2, we talked about him after the Dubai Desert Classic, and I said there's really no limit to how far he can go, and I stand by that. Like, he's just that something's clicked, and to see him hit that shot to win the golf tournament. Yes, it helped that Pablo was in the water already, I'm sure, but I was interested to hear what he said about the Team Cup, and people all sort of, mock events like the Team Cup, but for Laurie, it might have just been a massive, massive week in his career. He was great. And I am pleased for him.
Yeah, I think the combination of, you have someone he's been an elite ball striker for a long time, right? He's had short game, issues for a while. Putting's not been great, but the combination of now his chipping was really good. I think he was ranked first in scrambling on the second or third round. Putting, as you mentioned, with David Howell has massively improved. He's obviously won already now, so now he's got the belief that he can win. So you combine those things together, and this is someone who could quite easily, go on and win several more now.
Totally, and he's in the top 10 in the Ryder Cup standings, and I think he's 51st in the world, which actually surprised me a little bit. But then you think about it, well, the way his ranking points sort of fell off a couple of years ago, and then he's won twice, and he's also, picked up big checks and a lot of ranking points in events like the Dubai Desert Classic. I mean, he could easily have won that at 66-1 instead of winning last week at 20s when I wasn't on, but it's not the point. He's
back in action again this week, so who knows? He could go back to back.
Yeah, no reason he couldn't. Really, no reason he couldn't. And look, for Pablo, it's a good reminder. Some people will think I'm probably too generous, and maybe that's the case. Sue me. But golfers who don't win, if that had been Tommy Fleetwood on the PGA Tour, the whole of Twitter would have been, and if it had been, say, Thomas Dietrich, but it was Pablo Larrazabal who's won 9 times, and all he had to do was 2-putt to win the tournament.
From about, what was it, about 40 feet?
Something like that, yeah. And he had a good look at birdie on the previous hole as well.
Yeah.
And all he had to do was 2-putt, and he couldn't do it. And that's someone who's won 9 times, And actually, I think in the top 15 yesterday, the combined number of DP World Tour titles was something like 13, and 9 of them were Larrazabals. But it just shows you, it can happen to anybody.
Winning is hard.
Winning is really hard, and he seemed to have dealt with it really well, better than I did, maybe. I mean, look, I don't mind. You missed 7-1 winners, it's fine. The big frustration for me was I followed Ivan Cantero, and we talked about him last week, one of the most rapidly improving players on the DP World Tour, I think. And when he bogeyed 18, I didn't really think, but I knew there was a chance that that's cost him a playoff, and it would have been nice to get a runner in the playoff, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But like I said, look, what I do is, I as long as I'm not losing people money, which is a horrible feeling. Like essentially, I'm messing around on the periphery of the real things, which are people who've been working their whole lives to try and win golf tournaments. So, I moan about it on Twitter because it gets it off my chest, and I don't take it, on family trips with me and stuff. But it's not a big deal. It's just part of the game, and I'm really pleased for Laurie Canter. Yeah, he's a golfer and a half, if that is a thing.
Exactly, and we look forward to asking him all about it and getting his thoughts next week. If he
if people have got any questions they want to ask as well, we'd be glad to hear. I mean, we probably won't ask them all, but if you want to tweet at SlicePod with anything you've got.
To talk about other events of the week gone by, TGL Jupiter Links got maybe a surprising win, some would say, over Boston Common in a playoff which was decided by kind of a chip-off, basically. I suppose they have this sort of broadcast window, so they have to sort of do something quick. But it was... I watched a little bit of the highlights of that one, but obviously Rory didn't take the loss too well, and then he went and won a Pebble. So that was his retaliation on Tom Kim.
It's amazing how quickly we've gone from TGL is a horrible distraction and it's undermining the PGA Tour to Rory McIlroy, Tom Kim, and Shane Lowry all being in contention.
And Lucas Glover.
And Lucas, sorry, I forget Lucas Glover, as I am wont to do sometimes.
The other events to mention: Ollie Schneiderjan's winning at DLF, beating Bryson and others in the process, and that's his first win in a long time, I believe.
2016 Air Capital Classic, I believe. I may have misremembered that. I mean, you remember him contending-ish for the 2015 Open. I've always got a story. I was on him when he was runner-up to Henrik Stenson at 80-1 in the Wyndham Championship. Fantastic hair, always been a fantastic golfer. His brother was supposed to be good, wasn't he, Luke Schneiderjan? He's not quite come through yet. But look, he went to Live Promotions to get the one spot that they so generously offered for their tour this year. He missed out, so he's going to be a travelling reserve, which will earn him loads of money. But to go over there, and that golf course is hard, and win was impressive. Good on him. The other thing I think we had a couple of really big reminders last week of how good the PGA Tour is in some ways, right? Because when these guys go down in grade, whether that leaderboard was full of PGA Tour players or ex-PGA Tour players, now live players. We had Callum Tarrant, a huge price in Bahrain, threatening to do what Dylan Fratelli did the year before. It's just such a big drop in grade, and that's no disrespect to these other tours. It's just the PGA Tour is so hard. Every week there are 120 players, all of whom can win, and it's hard. And therefore, anyone who goes away from it, don't be surprised when things all of a sudden pick up. And we've seen it with Peter Uihlein to be a great example. He looks like a world beater now, but he never really established himself on the PGA Tour, and it's tough.
But there are some who've made that change who haven't really done anything of note yet. A good example would be Jimmy Walker, who's been playing quite a lot on the DP World Tour, and we haven't really seen him go. I can't recall if he's been in the top 10 of any events since
he's had one the middle of last year sometime. But you're right. I mean, Jimmy Walker's an interesting one because he got Lyme disease a few years ago, and who knows to what extent that is behind his struggles. But you're right. Jimmy Walker's one. I mean, I remain interested to see how Adrian Demond does over a period of time. He played pretty well last week. There have been a few. We saw Jonas Blick once or twice, but he hits off the planet, so it doesn't matter where you're playing. That's always going to make life difficult.
This is true.
But Troy Merritt's trying it as well, isn't he? And he's another. He's had injury and illness problems, but he's a proven PGA Tour winner. He'd be one. Like if he got a sniff on a Sunday, you wouldn't be surprised to see him win. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And then the last one to mention, which you did, of course, mention earlier on, Danny Van Tonder winning for second week in a row on the Hotel Planner Tour. He's in rich vein of form. So look out for him if he manages to get in the DP World Tour starts. anytime soon. Could be one to monitor, especially in South Africa or thereabouts.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether he would get in the Kenya Open because he won it once, but now I think about it, I think he won the Savannah Classic or something when it wasn't the Kenya Open, so he's probably not listed as a past champion, but he might get in on some other thing. But look, he will almost certainly, I would think now, well, he's a long way towards getting his DP World Tour card back for next year.
Almost guaranteed, surely.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you see the finish to the LPGA Tour's curtain raiser?
I didn't.
So Aylin Kim had 2 putts for the win, and thanks to Noel Lyons for posting this because I sort of it was a little bit lost among the Pebble Beach action, but she had 2 putts to win just as Pablo Larrazabal did, and again to emphasise how thin the line can be. Pablo 3-putted. She hit her putt. Niall says it was going 10 feet past. Now, whether quite 10 feet or 8 or maybe even 12, maybe 6, whatever, she hit her putt far too hard. But it caught the lip and went in. And that's 2 wins, I think, in 4 starts. She won the US Open when, in the COVID year, you know, it still counts, right? Colin Morikawa counts, Bryson DeChambeau counts, but DJ counts. But it was definitely a different vibe, and it's taken her a little while to go on and sort of back it up in America. And I think she won in Hawaii before Christmas as well. So,
yeah. I presume it was a one-shot win then when you say that the putt was racing past. So it would have been a playoff if that had not gone in.
She needed 2 putt, so she would have won by 2 because she hold the birdie putt.
Right. Oh, sorry, I'm with you. Yeah.
And it was a mere matter of Nelly Corder waiting had she 3-putted. So you know, it's a fair assumption that had she 3-putted, that might have been the game up. So just funny that, you know, it was a bad putt that went in, and that happens, and we have to accept it.
Yes. And in the news, no terrible amount of stuff going on in the news. We've got Tom McKibbin to live finally been confirmed. Obviously, we've kind of known about it for weeks now, but finally actually has been confirmed. We've talked quite at length of that, and, you know, I don't know if there's that much more to say. Although, you know, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on in his first live start this week under the lights in Riyadh.
Yeah, he's got plenty of form in the Middle East. He's a proper golfer. Anyone who's on, you know, on social media saying, "Oh, who the hell is this guy?" Like, I get it. I hate live as well, but who the hell is Tom McKibbin is not a valid question, really. He's a heck of a player. But it's interesting, the juxtaposition, isn't it, between him and Laurie Canter. Laurie, who went to live, was a reserve, has ended up coming back, and who knows, again, we'll ask him next week, but things have kind of worked out for the better in the way they've happened, you know. And another element we don't really talk about, and that makes me slightly uncomfortable, but there's no doubt as well that it must be a little bit easier for players further down the ladder who can come back to the DP World Tour totally financially secure versus people who, like Joe Dean, who we've mentioned, who a year and a half ago was working for Morrison. So I think that adds an, you know, Ollie Schneiderjans will pick up loads of money the next year. And if he goes back to the PGA Tour one day, that money in the bank might help in some way. We won't know. Yeah, it is a safety net. But look, all of a sudden, Laurie, we're talking about as a potential Ryder Cup candidate. And I think Tom McKibbin's going to have to win a lot of live tournaments. And we saw through Adrian Moronk last year, it is hard. You know, the winners usually Rahm, DeChambeau, Smith, Neiman, you know, beating those guys is not going to be easy. He would have found it, I think, easier to catch the eye on the PGA Tour, but he's made his mind up. He's a Legion 13, is that it?
Yep, correct, 13. Yep.
And I'll miss him, but there we are.
The other thing that came out just a few hours ago, which Alex Perry was reported on, the DP World Tour launching a 24/7 free streaming channel, which I was quite surprised to see, and I sort of read a little bit about it, and he suggested it doesn't affect the Sky Sports agreement. We don't really know at this stage. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed, I don't think, by the DP World Tour themselves, but we don't know what is going to be shown on that channel. I mean, obviously 24/7 is that's a lot of hours, so presumably a lot of replays and things, but I don't understand. For me, I don't really understand how it doesn't affect the Sky Sports thing. Presumably, you know, you've got people who would potentially be, you know, purchasing a Sky Sports subscription who maybe are only interested in golf. You know, I'd count myself among them. And suddenly, if you've got a free option, is that not an issue? I don't know.
What you're saying is you've already handed in your notice with Sky. Look, they can offer you free Sky if they want to mention on the podcast, I suppose. But We are corruptible. Yeah, it is interesting. It's going to be available through Amazon and very like certain smart TVs. I don't understand it. It doesn't sound like it's on YouTube, but it's certainly going to be available in the UK. It launches on Wednesday, according to Alex's reporting. So you can read that article on Today's Golfer. We'll find out more. I mean, it didn't sound from the description like they were going to be making content for this channel. So, like you say, it's just a loop of Pablo Larrazábal hitting the ball in the bloody water. But who knows? I had another thing I was going to say. Yeah, it does say you're going to be able to watch feature group coverage from some Rolex Series events and presumably live coverage of week-to-week events. But it's great. It's great for the tour to be accessible to more people. I mean, golf is hard to watch. You've got to pay a lot of money for it. And if this means, kids up and down the country can tune in on a Sunday morning and watch the final round in Qatar, which they wouldn't have been able to, they watch Match of the Day and then flick over to Qatar, then fantastic.
I completely agree. And you know what? I was thinking about this, when the Open was on last year. And, I have fond memories of tuning in to watch the Open on BBC. I know we're not talking about BBC here, but the fact that, a free terrestrial channel and you could watch a few hours of the Open. And I really enjoyed it, and I don't know whether my parents would have had a Sky. Well, they didn't at that point. They probably wouldn't have purchased one so they could watch the golf. So I may not have ended up, following golf at all had there not been that sort of free access available. So
totally, exactly the same for me, Sam. My memories of golf growing up are exclusively the events shown on the BBC. I remember Wentworth. I remember Justin Leonard. I remember Paul Lawrie. Tom Lehman, Mark O'Meara. That sort of era of, back then as well. I didn't. It's funny, isn't it? Now, it's a shame in some ways. Like I have a few favorite players. I guess people wouldn't need many guesses to figure out who they are.
Pablo Larrazábal,
Golf Saudi ambassador as well, but whatever. Yeah, generally speaking, like I'm cheering for the guy that I've tipped. And that sometimes I think I've said before, like sometimes when the majors come around, I'm a bit regretful about that. But invariably there's someone to root for on the Sunday regardless. But back then I remember being pained that these Americans kept winning. I was very like any British player, Gordon Sherry, fine mate, you crack on. Just anybody I could cheer for who was from my country as I saw it back then. And it seems funny now, but I suppose I'd still cheer for a European in that scenario again, just not if I tip the American, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll go on to the world of golf this week. There's a ton of events going on, so we'll rattle through them. We can't really talk at great detail any of them, but we've got the Korn Ferry Tour is the Astara Golf Championship in Colombia. The Hotel Planner Tour, formerly Challenge Tour, of course, is the Cell C Cape Town Open. Is Angel Cabrera in that one? Cell C, sort of.
Oh, very good. I wonder what the hell you were talking about then. Oh dear. Yeah, I've not looked at the field, but just to note that Liam Nolan played well again last week, didn't he? So
yes, you mentioned him. Yeah.
Really.
You know what? The player that I'm interested in, who I keep seeing his name pop up, and I did actually have some money on him last week, and he finished in a tie for fourth, I believe, is Nikhil Rama, if that's how you pronounce his name. He just seems to keep sort of. We've seen him in a couple of DP World Tour events, co-sanctioned events, where he's, you've seen his name on the leaderboard. He feels like one of these people who can sort of make birdies in droves, and then suddenly, he'll sort of throw in a double bogey. But I think he's someone with a lot of potential. I'm quite excited to see how he progresses.
I think we've inadvertently just struck our USP there, Sam. I don't think any other golf podcast this week or any other week will be mentioning the potential of Nikhil Rama. So well done. Yeah, we'll see how he gets on, but Danny Van Tonder presumably goes for a hat-trick. He did win a heck of a lot of tournaments in a short space of time a couple of years ago, didn't he? So maybe he'll do it. But
yeah, I'll be interested to see. Then moving on, so the Ladies European Tour is making its season debut, which is the Lala Merriam Cup at Royal Golf Dar es Salaam in Morocco, which of course is where they used to host the Trophy Hassan back on the DP World Tour. And interestingly, the Champions Tour is playing at the same venue, so on a different course, so the red course. The LET is on the blue course, so both are taking place and the same, which makes a lot of sense, I suppose. You've got the kind of infrastructure there, everything's in place. Why not combine these two tours, which don't and this is no offense to either tour, don't have huge followings.
Yeah, absolutely. Dar es Salaam's tough as well, isn't it? I I do miss the Trophy Hassan, but not at Dar es Salaam when it was at Golf de Palais Royal. Like around the walls of the castle, and they just had some dude sitting at the back of the 18th green with a massive knife, like for the winner, didn't they? I remember that. I also remember when Michael Hoey won it because I needed Matteo Malacera for loads, but there we are. It was a good tournament. It was a really good tournament, and it's a shame it's gone from the DP World Tour schedule. But yes, the LET back up and running, and the Champions Tour. It is the Champions Tour, isn't it? It's not the Stay Shore or whatever they call it.
No, it's the Champions Tour. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
LPGA, it's the Founders Cup, presented by the US Virgin Islands, but it's not in the US Virgin Islands. They're just presenting it. It's actually in Bradenton in Florida.
Okay.
TGL, Tuesday night. Rory is going to be, presumably he's on his private jet at the moment, and he's heading back to Jupiter, and it's Boston Common against my team, LAGC. They were convincing in their first match, and I think they're going to win again. I'm just going to say.
Even against a banging form McIlroy. Has he not got the week off? Surely they should have given him the week off. I think Hideki
hasn't made his TGL debut. I was thinking that he might play this week, but no, it's going to be too.
He's in Phoenix, isn't he? So there's a man with his priorities right. Let's put it that way.
That would probably be why then, yeah. But LAGC does see Tommy Fleetwood make his TGL debut, so it'll be interesting to see how he. Do you think he'll be good on the mic, Tommy? We like Tommy, don't we?
Oh yeah, we love Tommy.
Yeah,
we love Tommy.
But
he slightly overacts in some of the DP World Tour content, but I'm not going to hold it against him. He's not professional.
Well, will he overact in the TGL scenario? We will find out. We may not find. I don't know whether I'll stay up and watch that one. I think it's quite a late one. But
it's your team playing.
Well, I should do, shouldn't I? Really, I know.
You must.
All right, fine. I'll watch it. PGA Tour, Phoenix Open, which is it's a good event. I quite like it. It's they've made some changes, I believe. I was reading about this earlier on. Because obviously last year there was some very kind of raucous crowds and various other issues, someone falling from the stands, general kind of crowd control problems. But from what I've read, it's mainly, the changes they're making is something to do with, digital tickets, not allowing resellers, managing the kind of flow of the crowd better. I don't.
Not the flow of the crowd that's the problem. It's the flow of the alcohol, I would suggest. That's the problem.
Exactly. But it didn't really mention anything about that, which I sort of thought, well, is anything going to be different in that regard? Because I go to Wentworth relatively regularly, and what they do there is you can only start buying alcoholic drinks. I think from 11 o'clock. I think they start serving. I don't know whether that's the case in Phoenix. I'm assuming not after last year, but it feels like that would be the more logical change if they're wanting to sort of circumvent any of the issues of last year. But we'll see.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? Look, I think this is notwithstanding those issues that are bound to happen. It's a fabulous event. I love that it's made its own identity. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I mean, I personally couldn't care less about that, but nevertheless, it is Super Bowl Sunday. The golf course is rubbish, really, but then it gets amazing at the end. Like, it's perfect for this type of tournament. The only thing really you'd want to change about it is probably the 18th hole has been a little bit outgrown. It used to feel like a really challenging tee shot, and now the water's just not in play. Like, if there's a way they could put that tee back, I'm not generally in favour of just moving tees back until you're in a different state. But on that hole, the thing it lacks after the birdie, you can go eagle, birdie, eagle. I'd like the 18th to be more than a drive and a wedge.
Bit testing, yeah. I've got to say, though, I think the 17th is one of my favourite holes as a kind of viewer, just from the sheer sort of volatility of it. You got people hitting it in the water. You got few people who might try and sort of lay up. You got people hitting it sort of way right and pitching on. You got that really kind of narrow slither of green, when you're sort of chipping it. So I think it's a really good hole.
Oh, to that back pin, it's fantastic. Again, in some ways, it's of its place, right? If that was the 17th hole of a major championship, maybe it wouldn't sit quite as well. I mean, it'd be fantastically dramatic, but Sahith Theegala would be the best example I can think of. But I think Ricky Fowler, the year before he won, they're both just really unlucky with a bounce, and that's fine. I'm kind of fine with that in general in golf, because that's how the game was designed. But the game wasn't really designed with a massive pond to catch that unlucky bounce, right? And it can be fatal. It kind of was really for Sahith in particular. But it's a great event. In terms of trying to identify the winner, Scotty Scheffler's going to be a 3-1 favourite. He looked good last week. He came back and still hit his irons as he was before he smashed his hand to pieces. Didn't drive it quite as well as he can, but there's no reason really to think he'll be anywhere but towards the very top of the leaderboard.
He can be very hard to beat. Yeah,
he should be. And look, the thing about Scottsdale, whatever its faults, it is a proper ball striking test. It always has been. I think last year the top 6 in the strokes gained tee to green stats all finished tied 6 or better. The year before that applied to the top 5. And if you go back, you got guys like Kevin Stadler who won it, Kyle Stanley, but also Hunter Mayhem. But then Bubba Watson nearly did, Graham Dillette nearly did. Like flushers only, really. There's no faking it. You got to hit the shots. It's just an execution golf course. If you can beat Scheffler, you're gonna. I think it'll take a. Let me put it this way. I think the pool of potential winners this week is very, very small.
Interesting. Okay. Would you put personal favourite of mine, Tony Finau, in that sort of small pool?
I didn't think he was in the field, and if he's not in the field, then he's definitely not going to win. But you've planted a seed of doubt now.
I thought he was in the field. He normally plays this.
He's played it a lot, but now with Torrey Pines next week,
I suppose
he's just had the 78th kid or whatever it was. So,
it's sick, I believe, but it is a lot. I can say from having two.
Speaking as a father of 2, it's a heck of a lot.
It's a lot.
Good on him.
Yeah. Well, fair play to him. DP World Tour, of course, the Qatar Masters. We'll talk about our fantasy picks in a bit more detail shortly, and then
definitely will, Sam.
We will. And then Live, as we mentioned, under the lights in Riyadh.
Any chance someone turns them off, by any chance? No.
Well,
I want to make this clear. I don't know how to address this. I'm going to be semi-serious here. I really do not like Live Golf, right? And there will be some people who are listening to this because they know who you are, haven't got a clue who I am. They might not listen for much longer, but I really don't like it, and there are loads of reasons I don't like it, but it would be wrong of me to pretend otherwise. I think it's a rubbish thing that has been harmful to the sport I love, and therefore, because of that, we're not going to give it much attention, I don't think. There's some great players on that tour, but I don't care, okay?
Also, the other important thing to mention is that we've got about 14 minutes left, and we could talk at great length about some comments that Mickelson made, but we won't for now. Maybe another time. Onto our player tracker. Both we didn't do so well last week with our player tracker because Ayora was pretty poor, wasn't he? He missed the cut by quite a distance, and unfortunately Elvis Smylie withdrew with an injury. And I've been looking around. I can't find out any more details about what the injury was, how serious it is, whether he's in doubt for this week or not. He's listed in the field. But, thoughts on Angel?
Yeah, he was poor. He got a bad draw again. So there was a genuine draw bias last week of about 2.5 free shots. And he came to the golf course. It's a pretty funky golf course. And he came to it on a windy Thursday afternoon and just got off to a bad start. It happens, It's one of those things. It's really frustrating for him and for anyone who followed my advice. But what can you do? It just happens. It doesn't really say much.
He's a young player.
It.
It will happen, won't it?
But look how many Spaniards were in the mix, by the way. There's no doubt for me that they were all on the back of the green when Alejandro Del Rey won, and they were there, weren't they, waiting for Pablo? Yep. Idiots.
We can. I think we can move on to our fantasy picks. I should mention that our leader for the second week in a row now, Lewis Blaine. So he could be the man to beat early doors. He's setting down the mantle. I have managed to turn around my fortunes to some degree, Ben, because
I'm
now up to 87th after Canter's win, because he was my captain last week. So I'm no longer in the relegation zone.
You've only climbed like 10 places for that. I've fallen about 30. I wasn't that bad.
I know. I was a little bit disappointed, but I was comforted by the fact that you've slid from 13th to 47th.
Yeah, I had a bad week. I can't remember who was in my team, but clearly no one good. So, it went badly. We're going to bounce back this week. Look, Doha is a very familiar course, more so than Royal GC, more so even than Alhambra. So there used to be a really easy formula here, which was look at the Open Championship leaderboard, look at the Dunhill Links leaderboard, and look for those clues. There's no denying that things have changed and that the DP World Tour, its best players generally make their way over to the PGA Tour, and it's not as strong as it would have been when people like Adam Scott won this tournament. Paul Laurie, Thomas Bjorn were, towards the top of European golf at the time. Laurie, I think, was a bit of... In fact, I think both were surprise winners at the time, but they're class golfers with strong major records. It's kind of hard to find that now, but you can find some clues if you look around.
Podrick in the field, because he would fit that bill.
I don't know. Look, I thought Tony Finau wasn't in the Phoenix field, so I'm going to stop commenting on fields. Do you want my 6? Shall I go first this week?
Yeah, you go first.
So my captain is Jordan Smith. He has 2 top 6 finishes at this golf course, I think in 5, maybe 4 starts. He's very good friends with Laurie. They're both from the same place. They played together in the Team Cup. I do think that can make a difference. Not to say it will, but it could. But he's playing well, and I heard on Sky Sports that he had a bit of an accident, like tripped or something early last week, and had some pain in his shoulder or something like that. He played awfully in round 1 from the worst of the draw, and after that he was almost as good as anybody. So Jordan Smith, number 1. Your man Joe Dean, number 2. He's just hitting the ball really well. He missed the cut here last year, but it was his first start as a DP World Tour card holder, so don't worry about that. I'm going to play Antoine Rosner, who is back from the PGA Tour. As with Ollison last week, there aren't going to be that many chances to play him because he's going to spend a lot of time on the PGA Tour, you'd think. He's here in Qatar as a former champion. He won it at Education City, but he's gone well here as well. Takumi Kanaya, so far he's not really done what we all probably expected on the DP World Tour. I think partly that's because he's not necessarily played the best courses for him. And he's got form figures of miscut, but he's been very close on the PGA Tour, I think.
I've been waiting for him to win, Ben. Or at least I know he's won on the on the Asian Tour, Japanese Tour. But I've been waiting for him to win on the DP World Tour just so I can do my Hakuna Matata cover, and it hasn't happened yet. So maybe this week.
Maybe. And my other 2, just very, very quickly, Adrian Sedier and Hao Tong Lee. We're a little bit short on time this week, so I've probably said too much about mine. Who are yours?
Okay. Mine are, and I won't spend too long on this. Laurie Canter, I can't ditch him after he did such a sterling job for me as captain, so he's staying in purely for that reason. And I'd kick myself if he was on next Monday and he won, and he wasn't in either of our teams. Larrazabal and Campillo both have very good course form, both have very good current form. They have that Spanish thing. The Spanish players are doing well at the moment. I feel like they're incentivized somehow more than normal. Scott Jameson, he did all right for me last week. I know you had your doubts, I think, Ben, but
he loves it here, doesn't he? He loves it. He year before last, when it was in October, he kept his card by finishing, I think, 3rd here. So
that's right.
It was nice when they got that mental.
It was in a different slot, wasn't it? In 2023.
Yeah, they played it in October and they came back in January last year or February last year.
Yeah. No, he's good. I mean, his course form reads 3-3. He's 3rd and 3rd in the last 2 years. So obviously he loves it. And he closed with a 65 last week in Bahrain. So I think I have no reason to put him out of my team. Joe Dean, I've also joined you with that one. He's just playing very well, and at some point he will win if he continues to play well. Well, that's my assumption. And then my slightly out of the box one, not massively out of the box, but slightly, is Martin Kuvra, because I've been very impressed with him, and I noticed that he led the field in strokes gained approach in Bahrain, and I think he could be, sort of next most promising Frenchman, next breakthrough Frenchman.
You've got a little bit of the Martin Kuvras about you as well, Sam. So there we go. Maybe he should have been your player to follow for the year. But
someone did mention I looked a bit like Martin Kuvra.
That thing has been said to you twice now. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
2 people have said you look like Martin Kuvra.
Wow. I don't know whether is that better or worse than Jimmy Bullard, which is the other one I've had. I don't know.
I'd rather have a beer with Martin Kuvra, but he's not allowed, is he? How old is he?
He's 22. He's 22 now. Yeah.
Fine, he can hire a car and everything.
Incidentally, Martin Kuvra, I was doing a little bit more research on him. He won the Triple Crown, they called it in South Africa, which basically he won the 3 major amateur events all in the same year, which is apparently the first time a European has ever done that. So,
and then he won on the Challenge Tour as an amateur as well, turned pro. He's, it's on the up and up. He's, yeah.
I think it's going to be good.
I'm convinced, the post-Ryder Cup effect is the reason we're seeing so many good French golfers. What we've not had is anyone quite finish the job. Victor de Buisson was closest. Thomas Levy nearly won a major. We need one to just... Pavon's now gone and won on the PGA Tour. We need one to take that final step, and it will happen. One of this generation, Wihan Guillemundagi, Martin Kuvra, Julian Sahl, I think, won on the Asian Development Tour last week.
That's right.
There's loads of them. So, we'll see if they can take it all the way.
Someone will. Hopefully Martin this week. So that leads us on, of course, to the highest bidder. And we've had several submissions, so please do keep them coming. We're going to go in order. That's the fairest way to do it, I think.
And at speed.
Yes. Right. Since 1998, there have been 12 playoffs in the Open and Masters. Combined 6 each. Okay, so 6 in the Open, 6 in the Masters, so 12 playoffs. Can you name the winners?
All right, I've got a number.
Since 98.
I'm putting it on the screen now for our 200 YouTube viewers. We've got loads of listeners. No one watches on YouTube because you're all like over 40, I presume.
This is my guess.
I've gone with 7. What do we do in this?
Oh, well,
I'll let
how
you
about
go.
because I'm losing, I get to go?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Right, playoffs in the Open and the Masters. Okay, so I'm naming the winners. So we've got Bubba Watson in the Masters. We got Phil Mickelson in the Masters. We've got.
Did he win a playoff?
Oh no, he didn't win a playoff.
Oh my word!
He didn't win a playoff, did he? The first time he won, when he did that leap in the air, and for some reason in my head it wasn't a playoff, was it? It was last hole in regulation. Have I blown it already, Ben?
I'm so sad for you.
Have I blown it?
Well, I feel like I should just let you carry on, but then I don't want it to come across as though I'm, being sympathetic given my resounding lead. But I don't know what. I really don't.
Maybe you should have a rule where you're allowed one faux pas, and then you can just,
right.
A mulligan.
1 week only. You're allowed the faux
right,
pas.
thanks.
You've played your faux pas, which I believe is being added to TGL's various.
All right, go. All right, okay, let's go. Right, we've got Angel Cabrera.
Correct.
Open. Zach Johnson.
Correct.
Jeez, this is hard. Why did I go 7? I think I decided I needed to play this week. I had to go highish. It shouldn't be as hard as it is, mind. Spieth.
In what?
Didn't he win against Kuchar in a playoff in the Open?
Regulation, I'm afraid.
Oh, God, I've definitely blown it. Oh, dear. What a shocking effort. Go on then, Ben. Put me out of my misery.
So Sergio Garcia beat Justin Rose in a playoff, right?
Yes.
That definitely happened. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Adam Scott won in a playoff in the rain.
Yes.
That definitely happened against Angel. Padraig Harrington beat Sergio in a playoff. I can't remember the year, so I'm not going to say Paul Lawrie, who obviously won a playoff, but I fear we may have... He won in 99. Did it say 97 onwards? So I think I'm fine.
98. I think it was 98 onwards, so you're fine.
Fine.
Yeah.
You said Zach Johnson. Stuart Sink.
Of course,
obviously won the Open Championship in a playoff. Tiger Woods, who famously, when he chipped in, the famous chip in, he bogeyed the last 2 holes, didn't he? And then beat Chris DeMarco in a playoff.
Chris DeMarco was a playoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I've done it, haven't I? That's 7.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
You have.
It wasn't Angel Cabrera when he won the Masters. Was against Kenny Perry and
Chad Campbell.
Chad Campbell, correct? Yeah.
I remember that because I remember Kenny Perry. I thought was a lovely man, and he was there on the side of the green clapping as.
That's right. Yeah.
As Cabrera made his putt to win or to extend the playoff.
Was Ben Curtis a playoff or was it not? No, I don't think it was. Ernie won an Open in a playoff in the early 2000s, didn't he? There was one with. I probably mentioned this already. It's probably too early, but there's one that Stuart Appleby played in. Anyway, we've got like a minute left. I think I did enough there.
You did enough, and I'm going to have to give you... Well, I suppose that is only 2 points, isn't it?
It is only 2 points, yeah. I only needed to do 2, didn't I? And so I did more than enough. That's fine.
You did. Unfortunately, another poor effort for me, ultimately. And I think... Am I regretting suggesting the game the highest bidder? Possibly. But,
not as much as I'm regretting starting the song with the lyrics to Return of the Mac by Mark Morrison. So we'll call it even.
We're full of regrets today, Ben. Hopefully we won't be next week. Thank you as ever for joining us. We will be back next week with the addition of the DP World Tour's latest winner, Laurie Canter, and we look forward to you joining us.